strictly on character, he beat McGregor the first time. Strictly on character. He was not in camp 2 weeks before that fight. He was not even in camp, you know, and he was bleeding and getting punched up in the first round. But the fact that he has character, he's like, nah, we're here to fight. I'm going to see this fight out, you know. And he won that fight just on character because McGregor had none, and eventually Nate just turned it around. So I think he already has the character to be in a fight, like in any kind of fight, and I think he's got enough hand skills to where he's been doing boxing long enough that against a guy like Jake Paul, the matchup is fine. You know, it's not like he's going up against Artur Beterbiev or Canelo Alvarez or something. You know, the guys were elite level boxing. You know, he's going up against a guy who's pretty good with his hands and getting better and better. But Nate has always been pretty good with his hands.
So would you favor Nate Diaz over Jake Paul?
I would, yeah. I would. Right. As much as I got to respect Jake for getting better, and like I said, he's getting better, I think now he's got so much of a promotion behind him, so much push behind him, that now he's being forced into fights that he's not ready for. I don't think he's yet ready for good hand strikers, good MMA hand strikers. So I'd be surprised if he wins the Anderson Silva fight, and I'd be surprised if he could beat Nate Diaz as well.
Helen Yee here. Always great to be joined by the one and only Mr. Paulie Malignaggi, and we're here at the Paulie TV studios, and I have to say it's really nice.
Yeah, we're doing some good stuff here. Here, the Los Angeles-based studio.
Yeah, you have multiple studios, right?
Oh yeah, I mean when we need them.
World traveler. So I've been loving that you're doing a lot of breakdowns, a lot of reactions on your YouTube channel. So for all the fans who have not subscribed yet, where can they find Paulie TV?
It's at Paulie.tv on YouTube. Paulie.tv. I think it's Paulie.tv. Yeah. I don't know if the dot is in there or if it's just Paulie TV. I think it's Paulie.tv on YouTube. Yeah. Paulie.tv on YouTube. And check us out, all right? I give you reactions of all things boxing, previews, reactions. I do videos from the Brooklyn Stoop to the LA studio to Vegas to Florida to wherever else I am. Whatever needs to be said, I say it. Paulie.tv on YouTube.
And do eat pizza during those reactions. Because remember that one time we all, me, you, the schmo, we ate pizza together.
Yeah, I've been known to eat pizza during some of them. I've been known to have espresso during some of them, or eat cannolis during some of them, or even one time I've even drinking a bottle of fresh squeezed orange juice.
Oh, wow. Very healthy. So speaking of reactions, though,
and one time I had coffee stains on my white shirt. I didn't realize it until I was already in the middle of the video. But we decided to just go with it. We didn't cut it. Right,
your producer didn't tell you. You spilled your own coffee.
Yeah, I spilled my own coffee, but that's all right. Jimbo, my producer, we just go right on the fly. We don't edit or cut. We just go right on the fly.
Yeah, and that's what we love, the raw, uncut Paulie TV. So speaking,
sometimes people love it, and sometimes it gets you canceled. What are you gonna do?
It's all good. Hey, you can't get canceled on your own channel.
Exactly, unless YouTube cancels me. But don't get any ideas.
So anyway, a couple hours ago, Anderson Silva versus Jake Paul. Did you happen to catch, some recaps of that press conference in the face-off?
I didn't get any of that. I know, but
none of that.
What I did gather is that it's October 29th, and what I just found out in the last hour is that Lomachenko is also coming back October 29th. So I just realized they're competing on the same night. A real boxing fan is going to probably want to watch Lomachenko, which is the return of a great fighter. But then the degenerate curiosity in you also wants to see Jake Paul and Anderson Silva, because we can't help but watch train wrecks too. So I don't know. I'm pretty pissed that they're the same night.
Will you be watching both? Like two different TVs or monitors?
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch Lomachenko first so that Showtime doesn't get the ratings for my watching. And then I'll watch Anderson and Jake Paul later. Because actually it's on pay-per-view, right? I don't know. Yeah, we're going to have to figure out a way. We're going to have to figure out a way to watch them both. But one way or the other, I'll watch them.
Well, you got some time to figure that out. But I know you follow MMA closely, and with Anderson Silva and everything that he's accomplished in MMA and then, boxing now as well, what do you make of this matchup?
I think it's interesting, because Jake Paul hasn't fought like a real boxer yet, right? But he's fought fighters, he's fought MMA guys. But this is one that's actually good at striking. So he's moving up the ladder slowly but surely. And also, I think that Anderson, even though his age is at 47, he showed some pretty good skills in the exhibition against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who might suck, but still, he's got a name recognition, So it's pretty good. Honestly, I'm not necessarily sure that Jake has as much of a different level than Chavez Jr. Even this version of Chavez Jr., who's even more unmotivated than the previous version, wasn't that good to begin with. But I listen. You certainly got to give Jake credit for even attempting this. I do think he's being a bit too respectful, to be honest. Like I never really believed in that. Like I think when you step up to a different level, you've got to kind of show your rival, whether you're going to win or lose. Like you can't go in there trying to be friendly. I remember when I first fought Miguel Cotto. Granted, I didn't win the fight, but I noticed everybody was so respectful to him. And at that time in his career, when he was fighting, he was getting so many knockouts, and I felt like people were scared of him. So I was like, no, I'm going to go in here. It might be a different level for me, but I'm going to announce my arrival by saying what I need to say. Jake has been known as a trash talker his whole career. He's been a good trash talker too. He's had some funny press conferences and whatnot, funny back and forths with opponents, but. I don't agree with all of a sudden him doing the respect thing, because you pivoting, whether Anderson is a legend and all this other stuff, you can give all that credit afterwards. After you're competing, because you still got to fight. Whether you shake hands and hug it out and give respect, or whether you don't, you still got to fight the guy. The guy's not gonna, and the guy doesn't plan on taking it easier on you just because you were nice to him. Because at that point you're competing. So I'm not really in agreement with this new version of Jake Paul who's kissing ass. I'd rather see Jake sort of announce his arrival, whether he's going to win or lose. I have a hard time believing he's going to win, but I do respect the attempt at stepping up, and I do respect the fact that he's going at it. Because people can say Anderson is 47, whatever, yeah, Anderson's 47, but again, he had a good performance with Chavez Jr., and that was just a few months ago. So you know what, even at 47, he showed some skills. Even if I watched that exhibition of Anderson at 47, I still think that guy looks pretty good. It's not the prime Anderson, but it's still the guy I saw a few months ago in June still looked pretty good. So that's the guy Jake's going to be fighting, because it's just a few months difference, And so that guy still looked pretty good, and I have a hard time seeing how Jake is going to beat that particular guy. But hey, man, all credit to you. He's legitimately making a career out of it, and he's done well. And I like the fact that, like I said, I always like the fact that he helps other fighters as well.
Well, when you say that you have a hard time,
I gotta be honest. Another thing I gotta say, I heard Rockman Jr. is gonna fight Vitor Belfort. So he even
when?
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know if it's just a rumor, okay? But that's somebody told me that I heard this through the grapevine in the rumor mill, okay? Like I don't know. I don't know if I made an announcement that I wasn't supposed to make, but that's what I heard this particular week. Rockman Jr. is gonna get a fight with Vitor Belfort. So, look at that. He even helped Rockman Jr. get in there, because honestly, that fight with Jake Paul didn't happen. But if Rockman Jr. winds up against Belfort, I'm sure they're going to get paid pretty well. These weird crossroads whatever matchup, intersport matchups, they pay. These networks buy them.
But when you say that you have a hard time believing Jake will beat Anderson Silva, so how do you think Anderson Silva beats Jake Paul? Do you think it goes to decision? Do you think he knocks him out?
I think Jake has a puncher's chance, because obviously he's shown that he has heavy hands, but especially with the right hand. But I don't think he's going to be able to land stuff like that. I think Anderson's going to be very careful but very technical. And I don't know that because Jake looked really tired in the Woodley fight when he knocked him out. So I don't know if Jake has enough experience to know how to conserve energy when the fight is competitive, when the fight is stressful. I feel like Jake, because when you're inexperienced, and I've been there, we've all been there, even us guys that have a lot of experience, when you're inexperienced and the fight is sort of competitive, you feel like more tired than you should be. You'll start burning more energy than you should, just because mentally your body's fatiguing you, because you're like, oh man, this fight is so tricky. This fight, you get in your own head. And I felt like, I didn't feel like the Woodley fight was that fast of a pace, but I felt like Jake was in some trouble in that fight nonetheless, but it wasn't like an uncomfortable pace. Yet both guys looked really, really tired. And then Jake landed that monster right hand and knocked him out. But I took something out of that. I said, this guy's experience level doesn't allow him to relax the way he should, and it makes him get more tired than he should be, regardless of how much in shape he is. You still have to know how to keep your emotions in check, and that only happens through experience. So a tricky guy like Anderson, who's the Spider-Man, who does all these weird things, and he's going to be hitting you from weird angles, and he's going to be confusing you a little bit, that could mentally stress you and cause fatigue. So I don't see Anderson having one-punch knockout power to knock out Jake Paul, but I could see some fatigue setting into Jake Paul, and then Anderson sort of raising the tempo and stopping him there. But I will put a little wild card in there, a little audible in there too for you. Showtime has not invested all this money in Jake Paul to see him lose a decision. I don't know if Anderson can win a decision if it goes to the cards. That'll be another interesting thing to see.
Well, also what's interesting is the fact that Jake Paul has expressed interest in fighting Nate Diaz, someone who just fought out his UFC contract. So what do you make of that situation, and if we could potentially see Nate Diaz cross over and maybe fight Jake Paul in the future?
Yeah, that would be a good fight. I think that would be a fight people would want to watch. Listen, Nate sells no matter what. I mean, Nate is the kind of guy. He's very polarizing, and he's good for pay-per-view buys against anybody. Nate could fight a garbage can outside, and he'd get pay-per-view buys. You know, like, he's very polarizing, and there's a curiosity about him. So I don't have a problem with that fight. But I'll be honest with you. I don't know if he loses to Spider-Man, if you're gonna go right into a Nate Diaz fight, if that's that smart either, you know, because Nate also has some hands too, you know. So I think Jake has potential to get better. I think he's got to give himself the time, and I think the amount of press that he's generated, maybe he doesn't feel like he has enough time to get better and better and make himself mature into these kind of fights. I feel like he's sort of having to start to rush himself because he's getting so popular. But from what I see from Jake when he's trained in the training videos I've seen, and even in the fights, there's a potential to get better. I just don't know that he has the time to get better because there's such a stress now, such a push to move him into a better and better opposition. I don't know that the time frame matches up well to when he's going to be able to catch up to the kind of opponents he's now being forced to fight.
Well, circling back to Nate Diaz, after his win over Tony Ferguson this past weekend at UFC 279, he also didn't close the door on a potential trilogy against Conor McGregor. Would you like to see that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's. I think for the sake of Nate, like I said, he's good for buys. Conor McGregor against even a garbage can too is good for buys. I mean, but the only thing is the garbage can could actually beat Conor McGregor because he doesn't beat anybody anymore for years. So, regardless, though, he's such a cartoon character that he's good for buys. You know, and Nate Diaz is good for buys. So I think. Honestly, no matter what, I think the UFC will be stupid to risk that fight eventually winding up in another promotion if Conor's contract, God forbid, expires or he ends up leaving. Because, I mean, how many times is the punching bag going to be allowed to keep fighting under a contract? You know, eventually he's going to be over. And that's the kind of fight that can always be made. McGregor and Nate Diaz 3, they can be made when they're shot. I mean, I can remember they made, like, Leonard and Hearns 3, like, years later when nobody wanted to watch it, you know, because you could still make money on that fight, you know. And I think Nate Diaz and McGregor is that kind of fight where you'll be able to still make that fight no matter what.
And lastly, speaking of trilogies, this upcoming weekend, Canelo versus Triple G, how do you see that fight playing out?
You know, at first when they signed it, I was like, Canelo's going to knock this guy out. He's 40 years old. He smoked him out. Like, he made him wait it out and then, you know, made him get old and then waited for the third fight so he can knock him out and people will forget about the first two fights where he got robbed, you know? So I said, it's kind of dirty, but this is life, you know, and life is unfair. And I felt like Canelo's going to be the first guy to stop Golovkin and so on and so forth. But then, you know what? I was doing the podcast on ProBox TV with Roy Jones and Antonio Tarver, and Tarver made a really good point. He said, you know, we got to see the motivation of Canelo because he was very willing to accept the defeat in the Bivol fight without really putting up a fight. Like, you know, he came out strong, didn't affect Bivol. Then Bivol started punching him up, and he was like, you know what? I'm good. I'm just going to lay around, you know, not really push myself, not put myself at risk. Because to win that fight, you now have to risk getting yourself knocked out. And he basically told, you could basically see by his reactions, laying around on the ropes, not pushing the pace, that he was basically like, I'm not going to get myself knocked out tonight just to win this fight. I don't really care. It's not important enough to me. So when I see that, I say, you know, Canelo's motivation, you have to wonder, has he made too much money? Is he too satisfied with himself and with his career? Because even at 40 years old, you still have to have some sort of motivation to beat Golovkin. I think Golovkin, even at 40 years old, is going to be willing to get himself knocked out to win the fight. I think it's that important to him, especially that he hasn't got a win in this rivalry, despite the fact that he deserves at least one of the wins. So I think for him, it's very, very important, and he's going to put himself in a position to be willing to get knocked out regardless of anything. And he might, in fact, get himself knocked out trying, you know? While Canelo, if he sees the fight gets really tough, I am not quite sure he's going to make that kind of decision where it's like, this is tough. I don't feel, I'm just going to start laying around again like he did with Bivol and just, you know, not push the pace. And it gives Golovkin a chance to start winning rounds and start taking command. You know, listen, my pick is still Canelo. I can't see a 40-year-old guy beating him, especially coming off the loss. I think Canelo, if he has any sort of urgency to his career, has to push the pace and he's going to knock out Golovkin. But I think that's a different play to at least consider, and it could play out that way as well. And if it starts to play out that way as well, I think you have some context based on what I just said of why things are starting to turn that way and why Canelo's not pushing the pace when he needs to. But I think Canelo will knock out Golovkin. But if you start to see an unmotivated Canelo to where Golovkin is putting himself on the line, risking himself, willing to fight, willing to do anything he has to win, to the point where even he might even get himself knocked out, he's going to try. And even if I see Canelo knocking out Golovkin, I see Golovkin fighting his way all the way to getting knocked out. So we'll see. One way or the other, though, it'll be interesting. Because if Canelo's not pushing himself and he's expecting an easy fight, and then it's not an easy fight, and he doesn't step himself up to that next level in order to get the win, Golovkin could almost steal it, too. We'll see.
But for all the fans who can't wait to tune in more to Paulie.tv, what would you like to let them know? Nothing.
Subscribe, bro. You know, I got the best boxing conversation on the net. Paulie.tv. Well, with Helen and the Schmo, of course. You know, give some credit as well. But nonetheless, Paulie.tv. You get it from me the way nobody else gives it to you. I don't care if I offend you or not. Remember that. I don't care. You can take my channel. It doesn't matter. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.